Welcome back to the blind zone. What is a blind zone, you say? It's something that happens all of a sudden, or it's something that you refuse to see that was right in front of your face the whole time. And I have to tell you, I always say this, but I have an extra special guest, but it is extra special because it's my sister Diane. And what she's going to be talking about today, or what we're going to be talking about, is her fabulous yard art hobby. And she named it Nostalgic Brush Fairies. So we're going to talk about that, how she got into it, and some surprises that she had along the way. And she's had some really fun things that happened because of it. So, because of technology, she's not here with me, sadly, but because of technology, voila, she's right there. So Diane, say hello to the audience and welcome.
Hello, audience, and thank you for doing this. I'm a little nervous, but we'll be okay. Go ahead.
It's gonna be fine. Anyway, so the name of your hobby is Nostalgic Brush Fairies, and I have an example of your work next to the stool there, and it's Charlie in the box, and she surprised me with that last year. And he's out year round. He's the Rudolph character. Is that correct?
Yes, he's from the movie Rudolph,
Rudolph. That's
the
what I thought.
Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you have a whole series of that. Anyway,
Yeah,
so how long have you been doing the yard art?
I actually started in 2018. I was still teaching, being a special education teacher for the last 35 years. I was thinking about retiring and doing something quiet. So I thought painting would be nice and quiet compared to my crazy life as a special ed teacher. And so I started telling people about it where I was working, and they thought I was nuts at first. But then I retired and I decided to do this as a hobby, wooden yard art, because all I ever saw was the blow up ones and stuff. I thought, I wonder if people would be more interested right now in some of the nostalgic things in the wooden yard art. So that's why I went with wooden.
Mm-hmm. Well, because when you mentioned about retiring and doing something quiet, I applied once to work at a funeral home because I said, and the man said, "Well, why are you wanting to work here?" And I said, "Be quiet. Listen how quiet it is. Isn't that great?" I did not get the job, so that wasn't, I guess, a big a big alternative to why I should work there. But that's really great. Now, so how many characters do you have, or have you done with this whole process?
Well, I have done quite a few. I have actually painted, or not painted, but I have 82 different patterns that I have actually done, and some of them multiple times. Like the first choir Peanuts, I do a lot of Peanuts characters. The Peanuts choir came to me. There's 10 characters in it, and I did that in the very first showing that I had at a yard sale that's close to here. And that did very well, my characters. I also did four specific or special requests. Like I did a 3D pink flamingo. I will never do that again. It was so much work. It turned out beautiful, but she actually didn't even use it to use in a yard. She kept it. So, and I've done other things too that people have specifically asked me to do.
Well, because you have genres. You have, like you mentioned, the Rudolph characters, and there's what, 6 or 7 people in that set. Because you
Yes,
have
yes.
Rudolph and Clarice and the Bumble and
I actually love this whole thing started with I love the Bumble from Rudolph, and I wanted to do a Bumble. But my very first character was actually a Grinch. So eventually I did get to the Bumble, but would you believe I still don't have a Bumble for my house? I sold them just by showing the picture to people. I didn't even have the physical thing made yet, but people got to know my work, so I made the bumbles and I've sold them. So I don't even have one yet. So
okay.
I do a lot of the characters in Rudolph and the Peanuts characters, the choir, And this last 2 years ago, I did a survey about the if people would really buy a 10-piece nativity scene where Woodstock was the baby Jesus. So, and it was a big yes. And I'm telling you, it kept me very, very busy. People did want that.
Okay,
So,
because your very first character, because I remember when this whole thing started,
mm-hmm.
your very first character was a 6 foot Grinch,
Yes,
and
yes,
then you had bequeathed him to a man in your community, and he had it in his window, and everybody kept wanting to buy it, but you
yeah,
had just given it to him because you guys had become friends. And so he's another popular character, the Grinch
yeah.
whole
The
thing. Because
Grinch, the Grinch started with my brother-in-law saying, "Well, you want to do something quiet? Why don't you do this?" So he sent me this pattern, and this was my very first pattern. It's a full-size Grinch. This guy has been used so many times.
so then you take, well, let's talk through the process then real quick, because you have tons of characters, some of which people have really wanted, and we'll get to the surprise ones that people weren't that interested in. But so
Yes,
let's
yes,
let's talk through the process. So you get a big piece of wood, and I know during COVID the price of wood shot up through the roof, and that
yes, it
became
did.
cumbersome.
It did.
So
But go
you
ahead.
you take the wood, and your husband cuts it out.
I traced the pattern on there. He cuts it out. And that's another thing. I used to use a 1/2 inch wood. Now I use 3/4 inch wide wood. And it's all exterior, very good outdoor wood. And so, yes, he cuts it all out for me. And then I'll show you a Snoopy. Then I take the wood and it has to go outside somehow, and I put a backboard on it. Well, early on, I learned that if I don't glue wood to wood, this will come off, even though it's glued and screwed in here. So I learned that. That was a learning curve for me. But this is how they start out without any paint on them.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
this is just one of the characters, and then I primer it with a white primer, and then I put 2 coats of white, good outdoor paint on it. Then starts the colors for them. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is a Sally from my Easter collection for peanuts for Easter. And that back then I did just the 3/4 inch. I'm sorry, the 1/2 inch wood.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back, after I do all the paint, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 coats of paint. I put 2 or 3 coats of polyurethane on this. And
Mm-hmm.
then on the back goes clips, and they go in the ground with rebar.
Okay.
Everybody gets rebar.
And I know you're very exacting with giving them the details. You give them a lot of
Yeah,
paperwork to show them how to assemble it and how to maintain it. And you've had some things go wrong where the paint or
yes,
whatever hasn't worked or whatever, and you contacted the manufacturer and you worked all that out. Because I know behind you is some of my favorite characters, the old fashioned carolers. Now, if my HOA would allow it, they'd be standing out in front of my house, but they don't, and I'm sorry about that. And if I were to get that set, I would have you do me an old fashioned lamp that would go along with it,
uh-huh.
because I just I just I just think that those are some of your prettiest work. And I know that in the beginning, because of your brother-in-law, and he gave you hints and techniques, and everything is just a progression. You
Yeah,
learn, everything's a learning curve, and how you started and what you're doing now is very different as far as you've
yes,
learned some hard lessons along the way, but you
yeah,
and other people have given you insights that you've taken advantage of. So, because I'm
yes,
sure you're from your first work to what you do now, you can see your own level of expertise having gone up dramatically. Not that you were a hack in the
yeah.
beginning, but it's like anything else.
Hmm.
You
I
you learn as you
I
go.
still I still go back to that very first Grinch that I gave to a shop owner. And I look at it and I thought, wow, because I check it for the poly, if it's holding up. And I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that I never painted the sides on the very beginning ones. So now I paint all the edges to match whatever is in the front on these
Mm-hmm.
characters. That was one of the things that, and my Grinch is now, I looked at the real Grinch and I thought, aha, I've been painting a really dark face Grinch green. Now I do the lime green like this. This is one of my Grinch stealing the Christmas trees. And now I do a lime green to match what the real Grinch looks like. So I've really taken that into heart, even with the bumbles.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I also know that in the very beginning, and because you and I talk about this a lot, in the beginning you used a lot of patterns, and then because you've had some people request specialty items, now you use what your brother-in-law told you about was a focal machine, and it
Yes.
projects the images on the wall, and then you can make your own patterns, and so that gives you
Yeah.
limitless abilities to make that stuff. And this is where I get to brag on my sister. um, she's been written up in the local newspaper a couple of times. In fact, one of the last articles a journalist wrote just before his sudden death was on my sister and nostalgic brush fairies. And then so the guy that came after him, my sister, bumped into him at somewhere along the way, and he knew about her from this previous journalist, and then he interviewed her. He came to the studio, and they talked to her. And I read the article. It was really lovely. So she has a lot of people in her small community that know of her work and regard it so well. In fact, here's another brag on my sister point. Um, she there's a At a little bigger city down the road from her, they do a Christmas show or Christmas light or Christmas something or other they call it. And my sister has a couple of her pieces that are spotlighted, and it's a big success. So she has lots of people that follow her that appreciate her work and have asked for specialty items. And I know I've asked you to share the story about the woman that really made an impact on you. So can you share that story with us now?
I sure can. I want to say that I did use patterns a lot. I've just now started using the focus machine, and I'll show you my latest pattern of that in a minute. But yes, I think one of the biggest stories is I absolutely love meeting all these people. When I go to the show, I went to my first show 2 years ago, and I loved setup day. All the vendors come and talk to you. You go and look at all their stuff. And it was such a wonderful day, even before the show began. And then when the show began, there was a young lady that came. She wanted one of my Snoopy dog houses. That would be like this. This is not complete finished, but this was a big seller. But she really wanted the 10-piece nativity set of peanuts, and I had already taken 2 or 3 orders, and I knew I couldn't do it. So I sold her by Christmas because this show was in November. So I sold her the Snoopy Dog house, and she said, "I will contact you after Christmas. I promise. I really want that." I says, "You do that." She left. An hour later, I got a text message from a lady who said that she was at the show with her daughter and that she really wanted me to make that 10-piece set of the nativity scene for her daughter for Christmas, for this Christmas, for that Christmas, because she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and she didn't know she'd make it to next Christmas. Well, I sat there with tears in my eyes and I had my friends around me, and I said, "I have to do this. I can make her 6 sets." You just, anyways, I got to be friends with her only through texting, and she was in and out of the hospital. But her set, I worked day and night to get that set done specially. Hers was the last one that I delivered, and I took it to her house. We took it over to the daughter's house. She was very surprised, very happy. It was wonderful. I cried all the way home. And then January 9th, I saw the obituary. And my friend that I had just met on text wise passed away. She barely made it through that Christmas. So I went to the viewing, and it was very hard. But last year, I was back at the same show, and who do I see coming through the halls but that daughter and her family? And she came into my booth and said, I just had to see you. And we hugged, and I had tears, and I said, I've been praying for you. Because here she was without her mom for the first Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So I will
Well,
never forget that story.
well, and I remember that because and this is where I have to say, not that I wouldn't have been touched by that story because that's a very emotional story, but you and I have very different temperaments. If anybody has seen the temperamental video, I am a red temperament and I like people, but I like to boss people around. My sister's a yellow and she likes to be friends with people. So while my sister enjoys the interaction with all that, I'd be like, just get this and hit the road. So we're very different temperamentally, but that's why you're so good at this, and the fact that you're creative is helpful too, because I am super creative, but it doesn't come out my hands like it's in my head. So that's kind of that's not a
Well,
shocker,
I
but
think I don't consider myself an artist because I can't just draw something and do it. I use patterns, and in the very beginning, I came up with a book, and all my pictures of all the patterns that I've done are in
mm-hmm,
here.
mm-hmm,
Now I bought a machine that I could put pictures in, but it's been a learning process from buying better paint to better polyurethane that doesn't yellow to buying instead of screws that go into drywall. Now I use indoor outdoor screws. I mean, it's become a process. And you're right, there was a time 2 years ago where the polyurethane didn't stick or it peeled off, and I had never had that before. So, two customers called me, text me, and I think what amazes me is the customers themselves. They were so wonderful. And of course, I made them all, the two brand new items with
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
polyurethane. Evidently, I had, the temperature in the room wasn't right and the humidity wasn't right. So, with the help of the people that made the poly, they helped me understand that. So, a lot of things. The rebar. Now I paint all the rebar white because it's so dirty. So I thought, well, why shouldn't I
mm-hmm,
have that painted? So they don't. So you never have to
mm-hmm,
pound on the characters, you're pounding the rebar in. And I
mm-hmm,
even put black lines around the bottom, 16 inches up, so they know how far down to pound the rebar. And if I have a whole set of 10 different characters in one grouping, I'll send a detailed list of what the character is and what size rebar, and all the rebar is marked. So I have really evolved into, trying to make it as good as possible. And then I deliver some of these things. The other story that I was thinking of was the very first year I did this at the yard sale, I had Halloween stuff. And this crotchety old guy came up there, and he liked my Grinch. And I'll show you the Grinch in a minute, one that I'm working on. And he said, but I don't live here. He says, I'm visiting friends and I live out of state. I'll be back in November for Thanksgiving. Do you think you'll have them done by then for me? And I said, absolutely. So I took all his information and I got it done. And November came. He was back in town, and I drove it out to where he was staying. And it was like old home week. Like I knew them people forever. It was so delightful. And I think, that has stuck with me. And he took that thing and he packed it up just right and he headed back out of state with my Grinch. So I think that um, some of the surprises I'm thinking of would be that I thought it was going to be for kids, but no, it's more for the adults. All my customers are basically adults, and they're repeat customers from 4 years ago. They
Hmm.
get different things or they add on. So
Well,
that was
eh,
nice.
and we had talked prior to this taping about the surprises, and we had talked about things that we were sure were going to be surefire hits, and they
Yes,
didn't end up to be. And I thought Easter was going to be, because most of your stuff is very Christmas
yes,
oriented, and I was really surprised that the Easter stuff didn't go. And so you've
yes,
changed what you did by just imagining what people want, and now you're going into more of a custom thing where you don't
yes,
have it all out. Right? I've made all these. What do you pick from this? You wait till somebody says, "I would like this," and then so you're streamlining and you're streamlining it and making it more personalized instead of having a huge inventory of stuff.
yes. I think the last show I had quantity. It was quality, but quantity. I had whole sets of um, Grinches, and I do Cindy Lou Who and Max to go with them, and I've added characters on in the Bumble. There's 3 or 4 or 5 characters that go with the Bumble, and now I'm trying to concentrate on things that people are wanting. These characters here were a request, the old fashioned carolers, and I do have the lamppost. I never did that, but I did do. It comes with caroling cats and dogs. I did do a those, and I sold them separately. Another thing that I'm working on is making this stuff more realistic, like blending. I taught myself how to blend and shade. I practiced and practiced and practiced. This is one of my very first sets, or my very first one. On the legs, you feather that out to make it look more real. So this one I was proud of, but I've gotten much better with that. Like now, the very first pattern with the focus machine was an Olaf. Olaf, of course, being so popular, I found a wonderful picture of Olaf. He's on an ice skating rink. He's on an ice skating pond. And now I can say, my Olaf, I made a special Olaf for a special little girl. And as it was a surprise for her. And I got practicing, and really that Olaf came to life because of me just practicing with the blue around the white, and his foot is on the ice, and you can see the shading around that. I do a full size Santa Claus, and I spend a lot of time putting all the shading in his face so his eyes sparkle, and his beard really shows, and you can see the shading on a lot of the characters now. So I am getting a little bit better. I'm just teaching myself, but yes, I have some people wanting some different items, and I will do that. So I am going to concentrate more on things that people want instead of just a variety of things. But I still will do the Grinch. Let me show you the Grinch. He's a full size guy, and I'm also learning on the the color to help make the darker colors stand out. So he's kind of big, but I'm learning how to do that. So I'm trying to do a gray so that the darker colors come through a little bit better. But then again, he has the board on the back, but he comes with a 2 by 2 foot base, and he gets screwed in with a gas pipe. So he's a lot of work. He's still the most popular, but it is. I'm getting more picky, and I will contact all my people as I have customers from 4 years ago, which I love, and they're just wonderful. I just nobody says a bad thing, and I always stand by all my stuff, and it has just plain worked out. It's been fun. I named it something fun, uh, and I had somebody do the artwork with me to make it fun. So, and somebody once told me that if it's not fun, stop. Well, I'm not ready to stop, but I'm changing it up just a little bit.
Well, and last year you had a big show at a craft show, and I got involved because you were
Yeah,
required to put something that replicated your product in
yeah,
gift bags that went to the first 200 people. And I came up with a paintbrush, and I put some. I painted the tip of the paintbrush this bright, sparkly pink, and then I put wings on it like it was a brush fairy. And then I attached your card, and they were wooden wings, and I painted them, the glittery, silver pink,
yes.
and that was a lot of fun. And that was again, that was because I want your product to be successful because you work very hard at it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think that this has been great for me because we talk about this all the time, and I just wanted to spotlight what a great sister you are, and that this is your thing. So, is there anything you want to conclude with? Because I know that you've showed us your pattern and your new technique and the surprises of things not going well, but some personal stories where it has gone very, very well. So, is there
Mm-hmm.
anything else you want to share before we conclude the blind zone today?
I just have to say that there's been people in the background that when I get so busy and I don't have people painting for me, I do have people, just friends, just stepped up, helped me trace, helped me paint the primer on, maybe the first 2 coats of the white. Some of them helped me make the backgrounds at the shows because, normally at the yard sale, I could pound these rebars into the ground. Well, you can't do that inside a building. So I had to really come up with displays. And there was just one gal helped me make all the mountains in the background for the Bumble. And it turned out really nice, and people just are so willing to help. And
I was going
and
to mention that as well, that you're not a one man band, that you've had people teach
yeah,
you along the way, show you along
yeah,
the way, guide you along the way. You've had some
yeah,
people who do have some very good artistic sense that have
yeah,
helped you paint and show you demonstrated things that you then can learn yourself. And
yes, yeah,
so, and I know that, you always are appreciative of that. And, it's just like everything else. We all need help, and you got it when you needed it. And right now I'm glad you have a little bit of lull in the action, but I know you'll get busy again with what you
yes,
want to do next. And so, your projects are going to continue to evolve and to grow as, your clientele grows, and just see where it takes you, you know.
well, I have one request, and that was at the last show. A lady that worked at the show wanted me to do Betty Boop on a motorcycle. Well, that's very unique, isn't it? And I started looking at those things, and my gosh, they're very intricate pictures. So I'm still trying to narrow that down and send ideas to her what I
Mm-hmm.
have.
You're going to end up with another 3D flamingo.
Oh no, No, I'm not.
So then
It turned out beautiful, that flamingo, but I won't do that again.
I know, because every time we talked on the phone, because my sister's famous, and I'll say, "What are you doing?" And she's either I'm doing the flamingo or I'm cutting grass. That's her only.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
only two
yes,
things she
yes.
has.
I'll be cutting grass tomorrow,
Yeah, yeah, it's
but
good.
I
Yeah.
got to finish these guys. And then people are open this year to, I told people that I was going to be trying to make my own patterns. I'm
Hmm.
going to try to do the Peanuts ice skating. I'm going to try to do Peanuts camping because people have requested certain things like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
But I'm going to find out who wants it first.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
but
And so next time when you come down here, you just smuggle the old fashioned carolers, and
oh yeah,
I'll try and
I'll,
sneak it by the HOA here. They'll never notice those two 6 foot
I'll
characters standing on my driveway.
I'll stuff them in the rental car
That's right. That's right.
when I
And
come down,
yeah, and put hats
and
on
they
them so they
get
don't
their own
recognize.
base.
Yeah,
I'll even
yeah,
sell you the base. So
yeah.
we'll see.
Anyway, so this has been great fun. So thanks, Diane, for coming on, and
Thank
this
you.
yeah, this is it, well, and this has been something, you know, you deserve the recognition because again, Charlie in the Box is, he's out all the time, and you did a Cindy Lou Who for my friend Cindy, and it stands next to her piano. So, and again, you're a very big people person, and so that's why this also fits so well with your personality.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyway,
I am
see,
enjoying it.
yeah, this wasn't as nerve wracking as you thought, now was it?
No, and at first it was nerve wracking because, and I've spoken to multitudes of people in services and stuff, and I was nervous today, and I shouldn't have been
No,
because
because
it's
it's a,
you.
I know it's me, and it's
It's
just a
nice. This.
conversation. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for doing this. So
Thank you.
we will see you next time. And I've stopped telling people what we're doing next time because I say that, and then that person never doesn't materialize. So I've quit that. So you're just going to have to be surprised with who shows up next week when we come back once again for the Blind Zone.